What's up everyone, and welcome back to Whiskey Throttle. If you're new to the channel, my name is Brandon and I've been on a hiatus for about 4 months since I bought this bike. I made a review video, went over 50,000 views, I had a ton of comments, and now that I've put about 750 miles on the bike, I want to do a quick review for y'all, let y'all know what I like and what I don't. So the first thing I will tell you, of that 750 miles, I would say probably around 300 of those miles have been with a passenger on the back of the bike. So that is something to take into consideration whenever I go over this review. I would say probably roughly around 25 of those miles have been off of the pavement and in the woods, kind of on trails. Not real familiar with this trail. Like I said, I've never been down this particular spot, so I'm kind of just taking it slow. Looks like it's gonna grow up. Maybe there won't be no down limbs. I gotta remember, Casey doesn't have his dirt tires on his bike yet, so he may have a little bit harder time than I am putting old Triumph and the Royal Enfield through it today. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a breakdown of what I've done on the bike so far, it's mainly been a lot of back road riding. Now, before we go any further, I will go ahead and address the first thing that has been plainly obvious, and apparently there's a ton of people that are not in the United States that do not understand that the 2021 Royal Enfield does not have the tripper navigation, as well as a couple of the other features that are in Europe and India. So kind of keep that in mind. This is a 2021. I do have the title. I know it's a 2021. If y'all don't believe me, go back and check out the short video I did showing all of that stuff, but this is a 2021. All right, so what do I like? What do I don't? Well, the first thing that I do love about the bike is still the styling of it. The styling's been fantastic. I've not had any issues at all. The only thing that I will say is that at the 300-mile service mark, which is basically the break-in point, they check the valves and all that kind of stuff at the dealership. I know that I could have done that at home. I didn't have time. I've been really busy this summer. So when they checked the valves, one of the valves was actually tight. The guy said that from the factory, sometimes these valves are tight on these bikes. So I would recommend, if you do the 300-mile service yourself, to be sure that you do check your valves. Now, when we walk around the bike and take a look at it, you can see that there's not a ton of scratches or anything, but one of the things that I ran into is right here on the gas tank. You can see a little bit of a dent right there. Now, I've got a 5-year-old daughter, and I swung her over onto the front of it and was letting her ride in front of me, and the tank is surprisingly thin right there. So with the heel of her foot, she barely caught that and put a dent in the tank. I'm sure I can blow that back out and fix it, but I was disappointed with this being a brand new motorcycle. One thing that I learned very quickly with the passenger is how much the low horsepower does affect you with the passenger on the back of the bike. So with me and my wife combined together, I weigh about 230. She's probably right around 130. So I mean, you're talking about 360, 370 pounds between the two of us, and it really slows the bike down. It's really made for, I would say, a single passenger, even though you do have the rear peg set up. Now, we can cruise on the highway at between 55 and I'd say 65 miles per hour pretty comfortably, but if you try to push it past that, she's not going to be happy, guys. This is not meant to run 70 or 75 on the interstate like I'd hoped that it would be when I initially bought it. It just does not do well with a passenger. Even with just me on it, getting on the interstate, this bike runs really hard. It's redlining at about 6,000 RPMs whenever I'm running 70 to 72 miles per hour on the interstate. So I try to make quick jaunts on the interstate, get on, get off, and stick to the back roads would be my recommendations. Now, as for the tires have been surprisingly good in my opinion. Now, as mentioned, I have been on road a lot. The one thing I notice when I am off road though is they do cake fairly quickly with mud and become very slick. So keep that in mind if you're going to do a lot of rough riding in a very muddy terrain. This is probably not the best tire for you. I would change that almost immediately. The next thing is the seat. Now, I like the ergonomics of the seat and how it's shaped, but at the end of the day, it is not very comfortable. You have about an hour ride time before your butt really starts to go numb. You're going to want to probably invest in a seat cushion of some sort. As you can tell, I have not done that yet, but me and my wife have both noticed about an hour is about as long as we can take. The longest we've rode this bike is about 3 hours straight, and both of us were incredibly sore the next day from riding on the seat. It looks like it's nice and comfy, but it's just a bit too stiff. Just a little bit more cushion would make a big difference. I know eBay's got some seat covers and stuff like that that supposedly has added cushion. I would probably get one of those for sure. One other thing, you've got your mid stand down here. As you can see, mine's still on the bike. I will be removing that. That is something that I do not use hardly at all.
If you're going to do any kind of off-roading, it does lower your clearance, so it's kind of an issue there. So that will be coming off for me. I very rarely use it. I know some people do, but for me, I do not. Now, the only mechanical issue that I've had, and I wouldn't even really say that it was very mechanical, is that I went on a 4-week sprint without being able to ride. So the bike sat in my shop and I did not have it connected to a trickle charger. And with that being said, the battery was completely dead. I'm talking about it wouldn't even click. I couldn't get over that it had died that fast within 4 weeks. I know a lot of motorcycle batteries don't last long, but 4 weeks seems to be a little bit shorter than normal. So I don't know if the factory battery was just weak, or, you know, maybe that's something that I'll improve in the future as well. So suspension wise, I've been pleasantly surprised. I would say that this is actually probably geared for more off-road than it is on. I've put this through several torture tests off-road, as well as jumping it. I'd say 2 or 3 foot off of the ground. Obviously you don't want to do much more than that with a bike like this. I'll show you a clip of that now. As you can see, the suspension was pretty close to bottoming out. That's okay though. I mean, like I said, it's not meant to do strictly off-road. It does both fairly well. Now, I would stiffen it up a bit if it were me, if I were going to do a lot more off-roading, but for now we're just going to leave everything just like it is. Like I said, it's less than a year old. It's only got 750 miles on it. One of the things that I really caught flack for in the previous video was the fact that I did not like the setup up here. Your odometer, your basically everything that's set up here. Now, it's kind of grown on me. I like the speedometer. I like the tachometer, even the fuel gauge. I do not like your north, south, east, and west compass. It just does not seem to work very well. I know some people say you can calibrate it. I don't know how though. I'll have to go watch some YouTube videos on that. That's something that I'm not exactly super pleased with. I've noticed too, when you get down to about 1/4 of a tank down there, it starts to bounce around a little bit. So you got to keep an eye on your fuel gauge a little bit, but that's kind of common, not a super big deal. The other thing that I would recommend is if you are going to ride off-road, be sure to try to turn off the anti-lock brake system. It feels really, really funky when you're off-road if you get to lock down your brakes and it starts kind of shuddering. Keep that in mind, especially if you're like an off-road guy coming into the on-road world. That's just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. Flip that off. It'll make your life a whole lot easier and your ride off-road a lot more comfortable. Now, as for the lights, I have rode at night quite a bit. As you can see, probably from the bugs scattered all over the headlight. I will be changing that to an LED. It is kind of bright in the high beam range, but the high beam, it throws it way out in front of you. It kind of leaves a blind spot between you and I'd say about 50 feet, and I don't really like that. So I'm going to change the headlight setup a little bit. I don't like it being not LED. I know that a lot of people have changed that, and it's something that is not a hard job to do, but it is something noteworthy, worth telling y'all that it's not the best headlight. So what would I change? If I could change anything about this bike right now, the main thing that I would do is I would give it more horsepower. I know y'all have heard that from a lot of people in a lot of reviews, but I genuinely think if this was a 600cc bike that it would make a huge difference. The little bit of weight that you would add to the bike wouldn't be a huge deal to be able to have that much more power, especially if you're going to plan on getting on the interstate or a highway at higher speeds. Other than that, I've been pleasantly surprised with the bike. My wife enjoys riding with me, and you know, 55 to 65 miles per hour is pretty much all you need to go on any back road, so we have a good time. If there was one other thing that I would change, it would be the seat. If I could figure out a way to make that seat a bit softer, or if y'all have any recommendations for riders that do ride this bike, drop me a comment below and let me know what y'all have done to make that ride a little bit better. But those are the two major issues I've had. Other than that, I love the style of the bike, I love how it rides, and it fits all of my needs quite well. So if you are interested in what I'm going to say about this bike in the future and to tag along with for some of the actual off-road adventures that we're planning on doing this fall, be sure that you're subscribed, and we'll catch you guys in the next video.